On Christmas Eve, Mr. Freeze broke out of Arkham Asylum. Sadly, even with Wayne Enterprises funding improvements in Arkham security, it was common for inmates to escape. But this was Freeze. He was one of the quieter inmates at Arkham. He had never tried to escape before. Not since I first brought him in. So why now? The doctors at Arkham didn't know. All they could tell me was that Freeze started asking questions about the weather that week. Specifically, he wanted to know if it would snow by Christmas Eve. When the weather report said there wouldn't be snow until January, Freeze grew more sullen and depressed. He must have decided to cheer himself up by igniting the gas in the cooling pipes and blowing the cell open. Later, I listened to a police band for more news. Someone had looted the warehouse that held all of Victor Freeze's cryogenic equipment. One of the items taken was an experimental snowmaker. It was safe to assume that the device created by Victor Freeze, the scientist, was now possessed by Mr. Freeze, the madman, blanketing Gotham in the worst snowstorm it had seen in years. I patrolled the city in the Batmobile, tracking the source of the blizzard. Freeze's story was as tragic as they came. A brilliant inventor, he created a unique way of freezing the terminally ill until a cure could be found. His first patient was his own wife, Nora, who had been stricken with inoperable cancer. But the heartless corporation funding the project deemed it too costly and ordered it to be shut down. In the ensuing struggle, Victor Freeze was exposed to his own supercoolant, which rendered him unable to live out of a sub-zero environment. His wife's body was lost in the explosion. With his only reason for living gone, Mr. Freeze now claimed to be dead to human emotion. Anyone who called down a blizzard like this on Christmas Eve would have to be. On the road, I saw a car losing control in the snow, heading towards a mother and her young daughter. I jumped out of the Batmobile, shooting my grapnel. With only a few seconds remaining, I grabbed both of them out of the way, pulling them to safety. When we landed, the little girl asked me if I was an angel. I wished I could have told her I was. Instead, I stayed silent, handing her the gift she had dropped. I then headed towards the car where the driver was kicking at the headlight, blaming it for what happened. I stared him down, putting a finger to his chest. "Get some chains." He stopped kicking and simply nodded yes to me. Then, I left. I knew I had to find Freeze as quickly as possible before anyone else got hurt. Finally, I tracked the source of the blizzard to Gotham Cemetery. As if I needed more of a clue, I saw a police car sitting outside of the gate, encased in a block of ice. I retrieved my torch from the Batmobile. It had a 3-minute charge, tops. I hoped it would be enough. It wasn't. Taking one of my batarangs, I chipped away at as much of the ice as possible until I got the officer out. He was alive, but frostbitten. I wrapped a blanket around him to keep him warm. "Where's Freeze?" He pointed towards one of the hills in the cemetery. I headed in that direction, trudging through the snow, past the tombstones, until I found Freeze firing his snowmaker cannon, the source of the storm. I lunged towards him, but he was ready. He swung the cannon to hit me. The blow sent me flying all the way back into a tombstone. As I recovered, I looked down at a familiar wreath. One that I had placed there earlier that day for Christmas. On it read a note. Mom and Dad, Merry Christmas. Love, Bruce. I looked up at the gravestone of my parents and returned their wreath to its rightful place. Then, I headed back towards Freeze, ready for round 2. This time, I tossed throwing stars at the cannon. It ruptured the weapon's power core. Another shot would cause it to backfire. But to rid himself of me, Freeze was willing to take that chance. He aimed the cannon once more. I didn't need to dodge as he pulled the trigger. It exploded in his hands. When everything cleared, Freeze was lying on the ground. His helmet cracked. I grabbed part of the cannon that had broken off and headed toward him. He had endangered the people in my city. Nearly ruined my gift to my parents on their graves. I couldn't let him off easy. But as I raised the barrel of the cannon over my head to strike him, Freeze stared back with a blank expression. He already seemed defeated. The girl's question from earlier that night rang in my head. Was I an angel? And if I was, what does an angel do? I dropped the cannon to the ground and tried a different approach. It's Christmas. So, I'll give you one chance to end this quietly. Why'd you do it, Freeze? Tonight of all nights. Freeze raised his hand and pointed to a nearby grave. I guided him over to the headstone, which read, Nora Freeze, beloved wife. He placed a gloved hand over his wife's name.
We were married 10 years ago, on a snowy Christmas Eve. Nora loved the snow. I thought it sad that there should be none this year. And I wouldn't want my Nora to be sad tonight.
I let him stay there. The last of the snow fell around us as he spent Christmas Eve with his Nora. When he was ready, he went back with me to Arkham without a fight. Going into his cell, he seemed content. From what I read of the traffic reports, the blizzard had caused car accidents, but no one had been seriously injured or hurt. As far as nights go, it could have been worse. But Freeze and I would have called it a real Christmas miracle if we had known the truth back then. The truth that the grave he and I had paid our respects to was empty. We'd soon learn that his wife, Nora Freeze, was alive. Batman the Animated Series. White Christmas. Based on the Batman Adventures Holiday Special. Written by Paul Dini, with art by Glen, Murakami, and Richard Starkings. Adapted by Ben Wan. Mixed and edited by Tim Maxwell. Produced by Neuverse Creative.